Well, the Chiefs naming rights sponsor is Waikato company Gallagher. We spoke to its sponsorship and community executive, Margaret Comer, earlier in the program. And you will have heard some of that interview in Sharon's story saying it wasn't wise for Scarlett to strip in a room of young men and not expect something annoying to happen. Ms Comer is a trustee of Waikato's Women's Refuge, Te Whakaruruhau. We approached them for comment tonight, but the management there referred us to their chair, Anna Stretton, who's yet to return our calls. Joining us now is Dr Ange Jury, who is the Chief Executive of the National Women's Refuge Collective. Dr Jury, thank you so much for joining us on Checkpoint. Have you been listening to all of this over the past hour or so?
Yeah, I have been listening to it.
And what do you make of it all?
The first thing I want to say is that I'm really pleased to hear some of those comments from the people on the street that your program's just spoken to. It gives me a little bit of heart that your average person on the street is actually getting the message.
So the confusion seems to be around the fact that if you are a stripper, you are putting yourself at risk when you strip. And that seemed on the face of it to be the suggestion from Margaret Comer, who said, you know, that if you go and strip in front of a room of young men, you should expect something to happen. Yeah,
that sort of attitude, I think, is something that fortunately we're starting to lose. You know, if you're hired as a stripper, you're hired to take your clothes off. You know, that's not a license to touch. Absolutely and utterly not a license to touch. It's just simply not good enough.
Are you surprised by all of this? Are you surprised by the Mad Monday thing? And we should say that these allegations are being investigated. But are you surprised that this sort of thing is still taking place? And I heard Steve Hansen say, actually, it's just time to move on from this stuff. What do you make of it all?
Well, I think I agree with excuse me. I agree with Steve Hansen entirely. It's this sort of stuff, this sort of culture, is something that we just do need to leave behind if we're ever going to make a difference in our in our violence against women stats in this country, and they are appalling. We need to just knock this sort of stuff on the head completely. Just leave it in the past where it belongs. There's just no place for it anymore.
And to the people who were saying, and they're not talking, they're just talking about the specific incident, and we're receiving this feedback. People are saying, get over it, it's PC gone mad. There was some...
No, it's not. It's not PC gone mad at all, John, and we're faced with this all the time. But when we make comment about stuff like this, but when you pick up the pieces of the lives of the women who have been impacted by this stuff, it is not PC at all. You know, this sort of stuff has real consequences for the lives of women and children in this country. And as one of the people that you spoke to on the street said, what about if it was your sister, or your daughter, or your granddaughter? You know, it gives people have the ability to somehow objectify a person and say that that's nothing to do with me. That woman has nothing to do with me or my family. And they do. You know, that woman is representative of all women in New Zealand. And if we can keep her safe, we've got a better chance of keeping other women safe.
So one final question. What would you say to the chiefs and the people who were there who stand accused of participating in this and the sponsor about all of this as it's unfolded today and as it unfolded on Monday?
I think they need to stop and have a really, really good look at the culture that's obviously being fostered there. They need to do some domestic and family and sexual violence 101 training. You know, they need to think about how their behaviour and their comments reflect or are perceived by the rest of the world and the rest of their community, and the sort of behaviours that it sort of encourages.
Dr. Ange Jury, National Women's Refuge Collective CEO, thank you very much indeed for joining us.